Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please welcome to the stage North Carolina Board of Transportation member Pat Malamphy.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Pat Malamphy. I serve as a member of the Board of Transportation. I hope you all enjoyed the breakout session earlier today. There's been some terrific information shared at the summit so far, and I'm looking forward to another great conversation during our time together today. Before we get started, if you haven't already downloaded the mobile app, you can do so by searching for the Attendee Mobile on your phone's app store. Within the app, you will search for Summit, then click on the 2024 NC Transportation Summit. This app has everything you need to know about the event. You can easily create a login and customize your profile. Another quick reminder to everyone posting to social media, please use the hashtag NCTranspo2024 to keep all the summit-related posts together. Now for the fun part. We have an exciting lineup of panelists for this session. Our three panelists will share their experience and insight as leaders within the transportation safety industry. To introduce these speakers, I'd now like to invite to the podium session moderator, Kristen Barnes, who serves as the Director of Strategic Planning and Programming at NCDOT. Please welcome Kristen.
Thank you, board member. And thank you all for being here this afternoon and rounding out the first day of the Transportation Summit with us. We've got a lot in store for you this afternoon. So we have three great speakers that you're going to hear from. But before I introduce the first speaker, let's go through a couple of housekeeping things. So each presenter will present, and applause is welcomed at the end of each presentation. And then we're going to transition into a panel session that we hope to have some time at the end for Q&A. So be thinking about those questions as we walk through these presentations. So our first speaker is Sam Sinclair. Sam is the Regional 3 team lead for the safety programs at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. His team of highway safety specialists coordinate NHTSA's grant programs with many states: Maryland, Washington, D.C., Delaware, West Virginia, North Carolina, and Kentucky. With more than 12 years at NHTSA and 20-plus years of experience in the field of highway safety, Sam is passionate about influencing driver behavior through the promotion of proven strategies to reduce motor vehicle crashes. So if you will, welcome Sam Sinclair with me.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you to everyone that's made this summit possible. I know a lot of work goes in behind the scenes to put this on, so thank you all. It's an honor to be joining you here today, here in North Carolina, and to share a little bit about what NHTSA is doing in terms of Vision Zero and the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So let's get started. So I'm going to touch on four main points during this about 10-minute presentation. And some of this you may have heard before, some of it's going to be new. As you can see, first up there, we've got the safe system approach, meaningful public engagement, law enforcement community collaboration, and then data collection, analysis, and transparency. I know many of you come from the infrastructure side of the house in terms of transportation. I'm going to kind of reinforce that there's still a human element to this. Drivers are still out there on the roadway and road user, whether they be pedestrians, bicyclists, etc. So I'm going to emphasize that area just a little bit here and how we work with the public. So how many of you have seen this before? Hopefully all of you. If you've sat in on anything involving the US DOT in the last couple of years, you know we've been pushing the safe system approach. And I'm going to focus in a little bit today on the principles of safety is proactive, meaning we're not sitting back waiting for something to happen before we take action. We're going to be proactive. And responsibility is shared. The safe system approach really keys in on, it's a multidisciplinary approach. We're going to look at safety from many different lenses. But the responsibility part, it's not just us as the transportation professionals working on this. It's not just talking about responsibility is all of ours. It also means that we should be engaging the public, and the public, our citizenry, should take an active role in this. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then specifically the objectives here that I'll be keying out on, of course, is the safer people and safer speeds. So this is a chart from one of our recent publications. Just came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. There's a DOT number up here on the lower right-hand side if you're interested in looking this up. But essentially, this is looking at fatality rates by race and ethnicity from 2017 to 2021. So fatality crashes affect different communities differently. You'll see up here this orange line up at the top. That represents the fatality rate per 100,000 population for American Indian and Alaskan Native. And you'll see that from 2017, it was at 29.9, decreased about 5% in 2021 to 28.51. The next line below that is Black or African American population. This population saw an increase. I believe that is 28% increase from 2017 to 2021. Does that make anybody uncomfortable? Yes, right? I heard it over here. It makes me uncomfortable. Why do we have these disparities, right? That's the first thing that comes to mind. And then the next thing that comes to my mind is, how do we get to work to rectify this? Okay, so in terms of the driver behavior programs that you've seen out there, probably the most popular is the Click It or Ticket, which originated right here in North Carolina. A lot of progress has been made in terms of belt use, chipping away at the impaired driving issue, since 1980. Progress has been made, but certain populations seem to be either not getting that message or it's not resonating with them. And so it's time for us to acknowledge, collectively, we're not going to meet our goals in terms of reducing the fatalities and achieving zero as a number if we're leaving people behind, if we're leaving communities and population groups behind. And we pride ourselves on being a data-driven organization. I'm sure that the NCDOT does as well. And it's time to pay attention to what this data is telling us. And so what I'm going to get at here today is we need to go back to the drawing board a little bit here and figure how are we going to work and reach groups that traditionally have been underserved and overrepresented in our fatality data. So, with the enactment of the bipartisan infrastructure law, some new requirements came about to the grant programs that NHTSA administrates. And we work closely here in North Carolina with the Governor's Highway Safety Program and Director Mark Ezell and his staff. And part of the new requirements is that the states have to, as part of receiving federal funding from us, engage in public participation engagement. So this is how we define it here at NHTSA. We say this is a process that proactively seeks full representation from communities, considers the public comments and feedback, and then, to me, this is the most important thing, then incorporates that feedback into the project, program, or plan whenever possible. So what we're really talking about here is a two-way street, in terms of communication. It's not just us at the federal level or the state level saying, here's what the data is telling you, by the way, we're going to implement this project or this program. It really means sitting down with the folks in that community and hearing what they have to say about their concerns about the safety issues and incorporating that into our programs. So how might we do that? We've been in terms of big government, we're pretty good at informing, right? We do the public notices, by the way, we're doing this. We can send that information out. That's largely, a one-way direction in terms of communication. But, we have up here essentially a spectrum, moving to the right where we're working closer with people. On the very right-hand side are some examples of how we can do that meaningful public engagement where we're now co-creating with the people in that community. We're working with them together to implement projects and programs. Now, I don't know how many of you have young children. I see some hands. It's kind of hard to see. I have an 8 and a 10-year-old. It's hard to make, those public meetings, right? Say in the middle of the day or whenever they may usually occur, when you're working a full time and you've got children, you're attending their needs after school, making dinner, etc. And so, what we're really trying to foster and encourage to the states we work with is to set up these types of engagements at times and locations that work with people in that community. A Tuesday afternoon, you're probably not going to get much in terms of attendance for people that are working and have all these other obligations. So when you can, try to do those in places and times and offer some accommodations to get people there. And a great example here in North Carolina, again, working with the Governor's Highway Safety Program, Robeson County, a public engagement event was held there recently with over 100 people coming. And they had it in the evening. They offered some childcare and offered some food because it was going to happen at dinner time. And that helped the turnout. And people from that community showed up and were able to make their voices heard. So those are the type of examples we want to put out there. So what are some actions that we can engage in to work with the public? Again, I talked a little bit about, on the left-hand side over here, we've got things where we're doing outreach, where we're going to the public and saying, did you know, that there's an issue with X, Y, and Z, speeding crashes, using seat belts, texting and driving, impaired driving. We're producing pamphlets and facts sheets and all these other things to kind of raise awareness. And then we have education, which those are more about kind of training-oriented type information that we're presenting. And those are usually done at an activity and public events. Then we have partnerships where we're working together with either individuals, agencies, or organizations. But the engagement, again, is where feedback is solicited, and then we're acting on that feedback. We're not just collecting it. We're actually using that in our decision-making process. So what are the elements of impactful programs, safety programs, especially as we've moved into the bipartisan infrastructure law? So one of the things that we always want to encourage is to start with the evaluation in mind. How are we going to determine whether we're making a difference or not? That's a very important key element to devising any project or program. And then continually refining. We know that big gains are hard to make all at one time. In the transportation industry, we're usually chipping away and making small gains over time. So refine your countermeasures, learn from the process that what you're going through, and continually make those improvements. And then actively collaborate with diverse set of stakeholders. Again, widen that tent. We're not going to reach our goals if we're not out talking to the folks that are being impacted the most by these crashes. Law enforcement community collaboration. As we know, over the pandemic and then periods of civil unrest during that same time period, traffic enforcement is down over many parts of the country and has not regained its footing. So how do we, as transportation officials in the safety realm, the enforcement of traffic laws has been a big part of our toolbox. How do we move forward with the enforcement levels being, in many cases, reduced from what they once were? And this is where we're coming at. That community engagement becomes really, really important. Transparency in what we're doing, why we're doing it, and getting their input into how it's done. That's the way forward for traffic enforcement. And so we're working with law enforcement agencies across the country, asking our state partners to do that as well. So the data analysis. We are encouraging law enforcement agencies, be transparent with what you're doing. Where's the enforcement going? Why are you there? What kind of input are you getting from the concerned community members over how these programs are being developed, how they're being implemented? That will go a long way to rebuilding that trust and helping people understand why we are there. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here, and I'll be here for the Q&A session that follows. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Sam, for that presentation. So our second speaker will be Ryan Sharp. Ryan is the Director of Transportation and Parking for the City of Hoboken, New Jersey. Ryan oversees Hoboken's award-winning Complete Streets and Vision Zero programs, which received national acclaim after 7 consecutive years without a traffic death. Wow. In addition to overseeing Hoboken's parking utility, he also is responsible for the city's shared mobility programs and green transportation initiatives, such as bike share, car share, local public transport, and the build-out of New Jersey's largest public on-street electric vehicle charging network. Please help me welcome Ryan. Thanks.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Good. Last session, you made it. I appreciate you sticking around. So again, I want to give a big thanks to Kristen and all the conference organizers for doing an outstanding job. It's a really great production. My name is Ryan Sharp. I'm the Director of Transportation and Parking for the City of Hoboken, New Jersey. How many of you have been to Hoboken before? Raise your hand. Okay, a few people. I find it funny. Hoboken's a pretty small city, but there are a lot of people who have some kind of Hoboken story. Their kids went to school at Stevens Institute of Technology there, or they used to party there after college. It's a bit of a party town, or at least it used to be. It's more family-friendly now. For those of you not so familiar with Hoboken, it's a relatively small city of about 60,000 people, located on the west side of the Hudson River, directly across from the borough of Manhattan in New York City. You can see the skyline in the back of the photo here. It's relatively small, but it's extremely dense. It's the fourth most densely populated city in the entire country. So think all of the urban challenges that you have in a city like New York or Philadelphia or Washington, D.C., but really magnified in a really small geography. It's a fairly youthful city. About 50% of the population is in that 18 to 34-year-old demographic. It's a very transit-oriented community. About 45% of workers commute by public transportation, and that number was actually higher pre-COVID. It was close to 60%. Hoboken's also the birthplace of Frank Sinatra, and it's where the first recorded game of baseball was ever played back in 1846. So here we have a picture of Frank overlooking Hoboken on the waterfront, and I think that he intentionally has his back to New York City. It's just a conspiracy theory I have, but I think there are some self-conscious folks that are pretty upset that he didn't have a big hit about Hoboken, his hometown. And then on the right here, we have the intersection of 11th Street and Washington Street in Hoboken, which is allegedly where that first game of baseball was ever recorded. And I'm sure it looked a lot different back in 1846 than it does here. So why have I come all the way down here from New Jersey to chat with you all here today? Well, about 14 years ago, the city of Hoboken really doubled and tripled down on its commitment to traffic safety, right? And not just traffic safety, but safety for all modes of transportation. And so during this 14-plus year commitment to that, we're now in a current streak where we've gone 7 consecutive years without a traffic death on public streets in Hoboken. So we're going to talk a little bit about traffic safety for the next few minutes, and in particular about Hoboken's Vision Zero program and kind of what it looks like to implement a Vision Zero program in Hoboken, how we've kind of gone about doing things. It's not comprehensive. I wish I had more time. But hopefully this gives you a glimpse of some of the tools that we're using, and you can think about how you could replicate some of these things in your communities, even if it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. You don't have to be as densely settled or populated as Hoboken. You don't have to be as transit-oriented as Hoboken. A lot of these things you can do in your communities. So how did we get there? How did we get to 7 consecutive years without a traffic death? Really, the journey started way back in 2010 with a Complete Streets program. And that's where, as I mentioned before, the focus really started on designing streets that are safe and accessible for all modes of transportation. So that program was relatively successful for a number of years, but when our current mayor, Ravi Bala, was elected in 2018, he wanted to take things to the next level and make traffic safety in Hoboken more relatable to the public, right? We talk about complete streets, and that can be difficult and wonky to kind of benchmark. But when we talk about Vision Zero, it's so relatable to the layperson in the community because the goal is zero, right? Everybody understands that, and it helps us as public officials be accountable as well. So in 2019, we launched a Vision Zero program in Hoboken by executive order, and the goal was to eliminate traffic deaths and injuries by 2030. So we're very happy that we've accomplished part of that goal early, but we still have some work to do on the injury side. So if you have a Vision Zero program, the primary component that you're going to use to implement that program is through an action plan, right? And Hoboken has a Vision Zero action plan that serves as kind of a mini master plan for how we're going to go about implementing all the different components of our Vision Zero program. Our action plan has over 110 action items. It functions as a living document so that it's designed to be updated about every 5 years so it doesn't become stale. And we use the safe system approach as kind of the core philosophy for the type of actions that we're going to take as part of that program. And I forgot to mention the foundation of it is a crash analysis, right? We have to know where our high injury network is, right? Where our hot spots are, where we would target significant investments that have the best return on your investment, right? We have limited resources as public entities. So that's your roadmap effectively to where you want to target your greatest sense of urgency and your greatest amount of investments. Sam talked a lot about the safe system approach. Thank you. So I don't have to go into too much detail about that. But basically, this is a paradigm shift, right? Previously, before we had a Vision Zero program in Hoboken, we did a lot of chasing crashes, right? Members of the public would say, hey, this feels unsafe to us at this intersection, and we would look at the data and say, well, it doesn't look that bad. There haven't been that many crashes with injuries here, and then maybe something bad happens, right, a couple years later, and now we say, okay, well, now something bad has happened. Now we can use the data to actually take action. Well, this kind of flips that on its head, and it assumes that people are fallible, people are going to make mistakes no matter what we do, right? The best engineers in the world are not going to be able to design their way out of crashes still happening. So when we accept that, we have to use a systems approach to try to account for that, right? We got to take away shouldering all of the responsibility or a lot of it on individuals because, frankly, not everybody's a good driver, right? I think we can all agree on that. Not everyone's good at riding a bike, or not everybody's paying attention when they're walking, right? So we have to have a shared responsibility as part of the safe systems approach. So there are 5 kind of key principles here, again, that Sam mentioned a few minutes ago. I'm going to show you what they look like as being implemented in Hoboken over the last several years. And the first category is safe roads, right? And for Hoboken, this is the biggest part of our Vision Zero program because we have the most control over the design of our streets, right? So if you're a municipality, if you're a county or a state DOT, this is probably going to also be the biggest component of your Vision Zero program as you go into the implementation phase. So you don't have to immediately start with huge redesigns that cost millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars. It's okay to start small, and that's what we did in Hoboken. We had this program called daylighting where basically we're usually using the lowly vertical delineator posts that cost about $90 a piece, and we install them at corners to keep cars from parking right up against crosswalks and right up against the intersection. And this is one way we've identified through data where we can take proactive action to prevent, right, a pattern of outcomes that we've seen in the data where over 80% of our crashes that have injuries happen at intersections, right? So we're trying to use a very cost-effective, high-impact measure to improve the amount of visibility at intersections, improving sight lines, and giving people more reaction time if there has to be an emergency action taken. So also, we've kind of done this thing where we hack our roadway capital improvement program or a pavement management program. And basically, instead of just repaving our streets kind of in kind every year and using asphalt condition or PCI as our primary way of improving our streets, we've taken it a step further, and we basically made it into our Complete Streets program, right? So every time we repave a street, this is an opportunity for us to also layer in incremental safety improvements or complete streets improvements. And this gives us a way to institutionalize these safety improvements over the life cycle of the asphalt for each block in the city, right? So we may not be able to afford to do a huge redesign all the time, but if we can layer in some smaller countermeasures or smaller improvements year over year, eventually the sum of all those actions is very significant. So here's just a before and after. This is by a school. Just adding a bike lane and a painted curb extension and some high visibility crosswalks. Again, not expensive. This is a famous pizza restaurant. Attracts a lot of people in Hoboken. Before and after, right? So very simple, just adding curb extensions. These are rain gardens as well, so they have really a triple benefit. They have a placemaking benefit, stormwater management, and also the benefit of curb extensions by reducing those pedestrian crossing distances, slowing the turning movements of vehicles, etc. This location is next to another school, and on the other side is our waterfront walkway. Great high visibility crosswalks, but there's no traffic control here. So we had very low rates of compliance of drivers stopping for pedestrians and even children in the crosswalk. We had a lot of complaints from people. We repaved the street. Very simple. We added a pedestrian island, created a little bit of a chicane, and some RRFBs. And the compliance rates for drivers stopping for pedestrians in the crosswalk skyrocketed. And we haven't had a bad crash here since. So those are smaller things that we do through our repaving program, but then there's those targeted investments I mentioned for our high injury network, right? So Observer Highway is a gateway collector in Hoboken. It collects a lot of traffic coming in from the Holland Tunnel area that goes into New York City. And this used to be a 4-lane undivided highway, probably one of the most common types of highways in America. This was actually one of the first I think it was the first road diet of its kind in New Jersey back in 2015, where we converted this to 1 lane in each direction with a 2-way left turn lane and a protected bikeway on the south side of the street. So that has led to significant safety improvements. You can see the hellscape here on the left, people trying to navigate through turning vehicles, faded markings. It was just not a very fun place to be, no matter what mode of transportation you were using. And then that's the road diet post-construction on the right. Then we have Washington Street in Hoboken, which functions as the center of place for the city. It's the primary retail corridor in Hoboken. And unfortunately, there was a pedestrian fatality in 2015 that happened on Washington Street. A senior citizen was killed in a crosswalk by a turning vehicle. So that led to the redesign of Washington Street that happened a couple years later, which included upgraded traffic signals, leading pedestrian intervals for every single intersection that gives pedestrians a 7-second head start on the crosswalk, curb extensions and rain gardens, similar to what I showed you a few slides ago, brand new high visibility bike lanes, extended bus stops, etc. This is kind of what it looked like before. You had really long pedestrian crossing distances, and the signals were not programmed well, so you had a lot of pedestrian delay. So people would wait in the middle of the road to cross. And then after the curb extensions and the bike lane, everything put together significantly improved safety for all modes of transportation. Another example, uptown on Washington Street. You see a person in the crosswalk here just waiting. And now look how much the crosswalk distance has been reduced. So then there's the safe speed category, right? This is another category of the safe system approach that we have a decent amount of control over. There are some states that have preemption over cities setting their own speed limits, but thankfully in New Jersey we have home rule and we can do that. So a few years ago we did a citywide study with a goal of trying to reduce our citywide speed limit, because we know that speed is really the primary factor influencing the severity of an injury when you have a collision, right? So out of that study came a recommendation to do a citywide 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, and that's what it's been in Hoboken for the last couple years. And the way we educate people about that 20-mile-per-hour speed limit is in multiple ways. We have gateway signage throughout the city, where we also have speed radar feedback signs underneath them. We have supplemental plaques that say citywide over the signs, and then we have curbside EV charging, or a curbside EV charging program with big ad panels, and we use that ad space to promote and educate people about the 20-mile-per-hour program. And we were fortunate enough to win an award here. Those are my colleagues, Olga Garcia and Greg Francis on the right. Then we have safe and smaller vehicles. This is one category that unfortunately we don't have a lot of control over, because vehicles are typically regulated at the federal level, right? But we do what we can, and one thing that we've done in Hoboken is we subsidize a bike share program at over $200,000 a year for a city bike share program to try to incentivize more people using smaller and safer vehicles to get around town. And in 2.5 years, we've had over 1 million rides in our bike share program, so we're very proud of that. And then we do have control over our municipal fleet. So we try to put people on bicycles when we can. And we also try to purchase and lease vehicles that have ADAS features, right? Advanced driver assistance systems within them, like pedestrian collision avoidance and blind spot monitoring and so forth, because these vehicles log a lot of miles within the city, and so we do what we can to improve safety through technology. Then we have safe road users, what we call safe behaviors in Hoboken. This is where we're really educating people about the shared responsibility we all have to do our part when it comes to traffic safety in our community. And so a few ways we've done that is taking a hard stance on fines for people who park in our bike lanes, right? That creates a hazard that we know can lead to a bad outcome. So this is a way we can take that proactive action up front to try to discourage people from doing that. We're not going to wait for someone to get seriously hurt or killed in a bike lane because somebody was double parked. In the middle photo here, that's not a dad pushing a stroller. That's a police officer actually doing a pedestrian decoy operation. If you don't stop for that police officer in the crosswalk, you're going to get a ticket. And then we also have a Vision Zero pledge that we put out to the public, where we ask as many people as possible to commit to the principles that I'm discussing today, and committing to safe behavior on our streets. And then lastly, we have post-crash investigation and care. So we data mine constantly, our crash data, and we look for patterns in that data, and we try to use those outcomes and those findings to predict where bad outcomes or collisions may happen in the future. And we try to take preventative action, and the daylighting program was one example earlier on. So we have an opportunity to layer in safety improvements, whether it's through our pavement management program or a larger redesign. We use that data to feed back into our decision-making process. And then when there is an injury-causing crash that does happen, we have a task force of public safety officials and engineers and planners, and we review the contributing factors, and we see if there's action that can be taken to immediately improve safety at that location where the crash happened. And also, again, taking that information and feeding it back into future engineering efforts. And so in conclusion, 14 plus years, 150 plus curb extensions installed through the various combination of programs that we have, 80 plus painted curb extensions, right? We don't always have the money to do concrete or rain gardens, so we improvise and we do paint. 14 miles of bicycle lanes, which is on 40% of our street miles in Hoboken. 14 pedestrian crossing islands, 11 raised crosswalks and intersections, a 20-mile-per-hour citywide speed limit, and 0 traffic deaths for 7 consecutive years. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation, Ryan. Our final speaker is Melissa Wandel. She is an advocate, speaker, and the founder of M3 Motivational Concepts. Through the power of teamwork, Melissa champions opportunities to improve, save human lives by sharing, educating, and collaborating on transportation issues to help improve the safety of roadways for all users. Her narrative of the resilience is the why that propels her work in empowering and encouraging others to achieve the goal of 0 serious roadway injuries and fatalities. Help me welcome Melissa.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I thank God for allowing me to be here today to share this time with you all. I'm so grateful to be on this panel discussing ways to champion a safer tomorrow on our roadways. Roadway safety is a shared responsibility, and we have the remarkable opportunity to improve and save human lives. We can prevent transportation tragedies. Getting to 0 is attainable. Together, we are moving our well-being forward by implementing systems to make all modes of transportation equitable, sustainable, reliable, and safe. We share the same goal, to be a part of the solution, and solutions need information exchange, networking, and advocacy. They need education and outreach programs, not just for our transportation professionals, but for our communities and for our state and local officials. According to North Carolina's Division of Motor Vehicles, in 2022, the state witnessed 1,784 deaths and 110,544 injuries because of roadway crashes. And according to NHTSA, in 2022, our country mourned more than 42,795 moms, dads, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, children, colleagues, and friends. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said, "The rising fatalities on our roadways are a national crisis. We cannot and we must not accept these deaths as inevitable." But he also said, "Optimism is a core value of the American dream." Optimism. How hopeful to have leadership embrace this work and aim to eradicate traffic deaths. And I am optimistic too. Most often, these crashes are preventable. We have the intelligence, we have the tools, we have the technology, and we have the power to prevent traffic crashes, especially when we stand aligned, backed by the support of our communities, our partners, and our local and state policymakers. As you are about to hear, my personal journey led me to be a national and international advocate, speaker, and consultant, the president of the National Coalition for Safer Roads, an ambassador for Target Zero Florida, and Vision Zero initiatives, and the founder of the Mark Wandel Foundation. This afternoon, there is no way that I can summarize how my family's life changed the evening of October 24th of 2003, but I will share some intimate details of how one crash altered a lifetime. My husband and my brother decided to go for a quick bite to eat. My husband of 1 year and 5 days. My brother, I'm an upstate New Yorker. I live in Florida now, but was an upstate New Yorker. So my brother decided to come live with us in Florida. We had just moved into a brand new home, had been in that home for 3 months. And my brother and my husband decided to go out to eat, and they pleaded with me to go, but I was 9 months pregnant that day and just wasn't feeling up to going out to dinner. And my husband said to me, "But Melissa, I love you, and I'm going to miss you." I said, "Well, I'll miss you too, silly, but I'll see you soon." A couple hours go by, and I get a phone call. There's been a horrific crash about a mile from our home, and it didn't look like my husband was going to make it, and I was needed at the intersection. And I remember standing in my home, had 2 dogs, looked at one of my dogs, can envision it today, and one of my dogs named Dakota, and I said, "Dakota, when I walk back in, something is not going to be the same. I can feel it." And I got in my car to drive that mile, and I pleaded with God, "Please, God, not now. Please, God, don't take him, not now." And I get to the corner, and all I see are lights and siren, and the world just stopped. I get out of my car. I'm eerily peaceful, believe it or not. And I stand there, and knowing that I have to take care of this baby that's almost ready any day to be born, but I also need to be in there with my husband and my brother. And I see my brother's vehicle, and my husband is inside of it. And I see about 20 law enforcement just standing around my brother's vehicle with their backs to my brother's vehicle. And I go up and I ask, is he okay? That's my husband. And they said they're working on him. And then I hear this cry. So my husband was 6'2", my brother 6'4". And I hear these cries, these wails, like just something coming out of this man. And I knew it was my brother, and he was in the back of an ambulance. And he said, I went to him, he said, please, 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 please tell me Mark's okay. Tell me Mark's okay. And I said, you just take care of you. I'll check on him. And I turned, and they pronounced my husband right there at the scene. Those few steps back, I felt like I was walking miles. One of the hardest things I ever had to do is tell my brother that my husband didn't make it. I pleaded with the EMTs. You know, you see somebody 9 months pregnant in a situation like that, everybody wants to make sure that I'm okay too, and I was fine. I wanted to say goodbye to my husband. They finally allowed me to do that, and even though he had already passed, I promised him that I would make sure that our baby knew who he was in this life, and I would make sure that she would be born into love and light and not tragedy and negativity, and that I would make sure no matter what had happened that night at that intersection, that I would pull forward with love and grace, and I would champion our family, and I would do whatever I had to do to make sure that our little girl was taken care of. 2 weeks later, Madison Grace Wandel was born, and when I held her in my arms, I promised her that same promise. But I also promised her that I would not be a broken mommy. I promised her that whatever happened in our lives, we would take it and we would move forward and we would do well with it. See, my brother and my husband were on their way back from dinner. My brother was driving and my husband was the passenger. They were stopped at a red light. The left arrow turned green for my brother to proceed through the intersection. And when he did, a motorist traveling anywhere from 48 to 51 miles an hour blew the light, and the only thing that stopped her vehicle was my brother's vehicle. There was 3 cars involved in that crash that night. There was a total of 9 people. Everybody was fine, except my husband went to the morgue, and my brother, he was seriously injured. The depth of grief caused by roadway tragedy is life-altering. In an instant, the person you were, you no longer are. Family, friends, relatives, and co-workers, everyone is fragmented, everyone is devastated. Mental and physical health are altered and reshaped. The people that surround you in your happiness are somehow rapidly distant in your grief. And many survivors, like my brother, never recover. This crash has been 20 years later. My brother's life is still tormented by this crash. He's 50, he cannot work, he's emotionally debilitated, he walks with a cane, and since that crash, he struggled with opioid addiction. Moreover, he continues to be devoid and emotionally absent. I could not just sit with this crash. I needed to act positively in my grief and be a part of the safety solution moving forward. I investigated solutions that would aid and educate Florida's motoring public. I started researching red light safety cameras and educating myself first to make sure that they were truly a viable option. I reached out to traffic camera companies to get firsthand knowledge of their value, and then I reached out to policymakers, law enforcement, and civic groups to build a team to see if we could craft a bill in the state of Florida that our policymakers would pass to reduce the risk of these crashes at our Florida intersections. After 5.5 years of education, advocacy, and crafting the right language, the policymakers passed the Mark Wandel Traffic Safety Act. The bill, which passed on May 13th of 2010, allows red light safety cameras to be utilized at the most dangerous intersection in the state of Florida. We have a very good working bill. We worked on it for a long time. We also give $3 per ticket to the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis. 22 Level 1 trauma centers receive $10 per ticket. Roadway tragedy does not have to happen, and automated enforcement is a big part of that solution. This is truly how I became established as an advocate. My husband's death and my brother's diminished quality of life as a crash survivor. This advocacy work led me to the next chapter, the president of the National Coalition for Safer Roads. Our mission is to connect and empower survivor advocates of traffic-related tragedies with the tools and resources needed to end road violence in their communities. We bring together policymakers, community leaders, and concerned citizens in support of life-saving technologies, advocating for their use in cities and communities across the country. We also humanize data. We share victim and survivor stories to demonstrate the impact of unsafe driving, attaching real faces of real victims to the research results. My trauma ignited a fire deep within my soul that propelled me to advocate not only for Mark and for Phil, but for those that I never want to have to walk in my shoes. In my own grief, I had to determine whether I wanted to thrive in life or just merely survive. I opted to embrace what life handed my family and thrive. I chose to become hope in action. My trauma, my memories are still as palpable today, and I want to advocate in the highest imaginable way so that your loved ones and you never have to walk in my shoes. My trauma became my passion, my desire to get to zero before zero was even sought after. One of the ways I turn statistics and data into the real faces of our loved ones is by creating the website Driving Down Heartache, which showcases real-life stories, memorializing those who have died and honoring those who have been seriously injured in our roadway tragedies. The purpose of this website is twofold. It serves as a peaceful space to remember, heal, and support one another while also encouraging personal accountability for all road users. Anyone affected in the state of Florida can submit a testimonial. Remember our daughter, Madison Grace? She's now 20 years old. She too is a victim of that crash, although we've never say the word victim, but she is a victim of that crash, which happened on October 24th. She never got to meet her dad. Mark was so excited to become a dad, and the ways his absence has affected Madison's life are too numerous to discuss here. Madison still struggles today to define who she is, not knowing where the other half of her originated from. Throughout all my advocacy efforts, my daughter was by my side. My goal was to be certain that she felt empowered. I wanted to show her, amidst adversity, we can all do hard things. With Madison in mind, shortly after Mark's death, I started a nonprofit in my husband's name, the Mark Wandel Foundation. Our nonprofit resources, aids, and uplifts children who have experienced the death of a parent, sibling, or guardian. Our program is donor-funded, and all of our services are free to the youth that we serve. We offer equine-assisted learning, a 3-day camp, scholarship opportunities, and reconnects. For the past 20 years, I've watched many of our youth grow within our foundation, transitioning from confused to capable, from lost to leaders. Today, I'm an active Target Zero Florida ambassador and Vision Zero ambassador, working to implement both initiatives in my state and nationwide. Throughout my advocacy work, I've learned that to achieve results, we must all work together, relying on solidarity, communication, cooperation, and coordination. Whether you're an engineer, a policymaker, representative from a government agency, law enforcement, community organization, local business, or a member of the public, we are all advocates for safer roads. We must keep the momentum going, continually striving for change. When we commit to change, to supporting and uplifting one another, to collectively merging our expertise, we will change lives for the better. We will see fewer violators and fewer victims. I'm here for more than to discuss roadway safety and the crash that reshaped my family's life. My purpose? I'm about committed action, about pursuing what ignites my passion. Together we must persevere. We must drive down this insatiable heartache on our national roadways. Optimism serves as a catalyst for change. Optimism is the fuel that propels us forward, even in the face of adversity. It is the belief that no matter how dark the present may seem, a brighter future is absolutely possible. Optimism fosters resilience, empowering us to overcome obstacles with hope, with determination. Optimism is contagious, spreading positivity and inspiring those around us to strive for better. Optimism is not blind faith. It's a mindset that sees opportunities in every single challenge. Optimism is the cornerstone of innovation, driving us to imagine and create a world beyond our current limitations. Optimism is within each and every one of us, but we must have the will to see beyond our challenges. My husband's untimely death, my brother's emotional and physical debilitation, and the daunting thought of being a single parent confronted me unexpectedly. But I remained optimistic. I knew I was the one with the power to refocus and reshape not my own future, but my daughter's. Each and every one of us deserves a brighter future, and together we can change the trajectory of our national roadway crisis. We can all champion for change, alleviating heartache and saving lives. If you have determination, if you have optimism, and if you are ready to embrace this challenge, then join me, because together we can all do hard things. I thank God for allowing me to utilize my voice. You are appreciated, and I am truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Now we're just going to transition quickly into the panel session. So I'm going to be asking you all let's discuss some examples of different approaches you've used professionally to help prevent transportation tragedies. So Sam, we're going to start with you for the first question. So based on your perspective from working with the National Traffic Safety Organization, what do you think are the best ways to educate the public about safe driving practices?
Well, that's a very good question. I think I'd relate it back to somewhat what I talked about, is knowing your audience. Who are you trying to reach? Going to them where they're at, meeting them where they're at. And we live in a time where it certainly feels like we're on the precipice of some big changes technologically, and how young people, receive information and consume that has changed drastically from the time I was, a high schooler, a teenager. And I think that some of the most effective programs are do exactly that. They're meeting folks where they're at, whether that's young people, older people, but fashioning your message and the facts to the methodologies and the mediums that people are consuming their information, I think is of the utmost importance. Being flexible, and meeting people where they're at.
Good. Thank you for that. So you touched on technology, so we'll open this question up to the entire panel, whoever would like to answer. But technology in vehicles is becoming increasingly smarter and more automated. Can you all talk about how technology can play a role in enhancing safety and efficiency in our roadways within our lifetime? Anybody?
Sure, I'll take it again. Yeah, I think that technology holds a lot of promise. In the last 20 years, we've seen a lot of the driver assistance technology really take hold in vehicles. The advanced collision warnings, the electronic stability control, all of those things have incrementally improved safety on our roadways, and it's exciting, right? The innovation that's coming about with these automated vehicles, but we do have to study it. We have to make sure that it is vetted and completely ready to go. There's a lot of these pilot, studies going on around the country at this time, and so it's going to take some time. I know that we're all in a hurry for it to get here, but we've got to make sure, we've got to do our due diligence to make sure it's ready to go. But it is an exciting time in the transportation industry to see this technology really moving forward at a pretty quick pace now.
And I'll just say, I think we need that technology, right? There is no one-size-fits-all approach to Vision Zero programs or traffic safety. There are some communities that are just built in a way that trillions of dollars in public transportation investments and changes in land use patterns would be required to kind of change the mode share in a meaningful way. And so for communities, especially in the Sun Belt right here in North Carolina in particular, we're going to need technology to step in and help us.
Yeah, so I think some of the things, we were in D.C. last week and we talked about this. I was with 32 families from all over the country, and so we had a lot of discussion on this. And first of all, I think it's great, a lot of the things that are just the simple things that are helping us in our vehicles now, helping us to avoid collisions. That's really good. Lane departure warning, automatic emergency braking is really good. Adaptive cruise control. We have all those things that are in our cars that are kind of helping us. But the biggest thing we have to remember is that they're here, but they're not here to replace us. They're here to help us. And I think a lot of times we get fooled by these things in our vehicles because they're still allowing, people think that the vehicles can take care of the things that we still as humans need to take care of. So I think we've come a long way, but I also have to say, we talk a lot about equity, and although we're doing all these amazing things, putting this technology in the cars, many people, there's a huge population that will never be able to afford this. And so although we have these cars, these car companies, our automation, these car companies are making our cars to be much more safer, there's a big population that's never going to get there. They're never going to be able to afford these vehicles. So how do we help them out as well? Because again, like you had said earlier, we don't want to leave people behind, and that's kind of what we're doing in all this new technology.
And so in follow-up to that, do you have any concerns, or have you heard concerns around the reliability of technology?
Well, we certainly see some news stories, right? And those are, the crashes are of course being studied very carefully to determine what's happening there. But I think Melissa made a very good point in that ultimately, as the drivers in there, we still bear that responsibility while this technology is going. We cannot just completely check out. And you see some of those stories in the news, and unfortunately, that's when, at least a few times, a disaster has struck. So we have to continue to pay attention to what's going on. We're still supervising that technology in there. So yeah, I think there are concerns of how it's going to be implemented, what the responsibilities are, and those things are still kind of being figured out, and it's going to take a little time for that to happen. So yeah, I think there are valid concerns. Anytime you're deploying this new technology of that of that level.
Good. So Ryan, the city of Hoboken has had an unbelievably low crash fatality within the last 7 years. What advice would you give this group on if we're trying to walk towards that or figure out ways to improve traffic safety in their community, in their area? Where do you start? What would be a good starting point?
I guess I'm the one who needs the microphone.
Check.
Okay, all right. My message would be it's okay to start small. You don't have to go 0 to 100. Every community is different, and every community has its own challenges and its own, kind of realities, right? And so, in Hoboken, a very successful tactic has been using pilot programs and demonstration projects so that people can see something new for the first time, right? And that's one way to build support and overcome some concerns that are valid from the public. And when people see these things in action, they get to feel them and experience them. That's usually translating into people being more comfortable with them. And then over time, it's easier to make those larger investments and to justify them. And then people want more, right? So yeah, you don't have to go 0 to 100. You start with what works for your community, and it may be one intersection, it may be one street or one block, and you start there, and you build momentum, and then that feeds on itself.
Good. Thank you for that. So Melissa, if there's one thing that everyone here could walk away with today, what would that be?
That we're all advocates. It's going to take all of us working together, utilizing our own expertise to get to zero. I may not be able to do what each and every one of you do in here, and you may not be able to do what I do, but together we can absolutely, with our combined efforts, optimism, our will, and our skill sets, we can drive down that insatiable heartache on our roadways, and we can get to zero serious injury and zero crashes.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank the three of you all for participating in this session with us, and I believe they'll all be hanging around for the reception afterwards, so feel free, please come up, introduce yourself, ask them any questions that can help North Carolina transition into a safer state. So I think discussions like these are so important, and as we continue to work to prevent tragedies and create a safer transportation for everyone, we have to have them often and frequent. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and experiences today, and I am going to call upon the Board of Transportation Chair, Mike Fox, for some closing remarks. Thank you.
I think she said no.
Good afternoon. I am not Chairman Fox. Evidently, he has left the building. No, just kidding. No, I'm standing in for him. Happy to do so. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you to our speakers and to all of you for joining us today. We've had many insightful conversations all throughout the day. At this time, I'd like to ask that our 4 research and development breakout session panelists and exhibitor from our pre-summit technical tour join me on stage. Dr. Liu, if you're in the room. Dr. Carwy, if you're in the room. Dr. Hildreth, if you're in the room, Dr. Chin, and also Dr. Williams. Please, if y'all could join me on stage, I would appreciate it. I'm also going to invite our Vice Chair, Andy Perkins, to come up here with me. And while, yes, sir, I know this is a little off script, but I like to go off script. And while we're doing that, if we can also get North Carolina Chamber VP Jake Cashin, I think he's supposed to be here. And also NC Go, Mark Finlinson. Are you in the room? Give everybody a chance to get up here. I see Mark. Hey guys, hey Jake, glad to have y'all up here. So what we like to do this afternoon is really show our appreciation for these 4 fine universities. They really do a lot of work for us, a lot of work across the state, research for us. If you had an opportunity to go to the technical tour yesterday, You saw a lot of good things that A&T is doing here locally that's impacting us, but also you saw a lot of their partnerships with other universities like NC State. Again, go Pack, like I said this morning. But what we're doing in appreciation of what these universities do for us for their research and partnership, we're glad to present each of them with a $20,000 check on behalf of the department, on behalf of NC Go, and behalf of the NC Chamber. So thank y'all very much. So thank you, guys. Y'all can, Andy, you stay, but if everybody else, y'all are welcome to leave.
I'm responding.
So our thoughts are we would like these universities to use the checks for further research, to fund scholarships, or contribute toward workforce development opportunities related to advancement of transportation in North Carolina. So they already do great work, and I'm sure they will continue to do great work with those monies. So thank you again, guys. For anybody in the audience that couldn't make it to yesterday's pre-summit technical tour, we do have a short video we'd like to show you. I think it takes about 1.5 minutes, so just bear with us shortly. I'll now ask Board of Transportation Vice Chair Andy Perkins to come give us some closing comments. Again, thank y'all for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We got some rhythm in that thing, right? We all got some shake a little bit. I would like to, first of all, say that we are now concluding our first day, and I want to thank first personally our partners, NC Go, as well as NC, the North Carolina Chamber, for helping us to pull off, I think, a very successful first day. Matter of fact, first day and a half. If you haven't done so already, I would like for all of you to take the opportunity to visit the exhibit hall. There are some wonderful exhibits there. I toured that this morning, and the folks are really encouraged and they're very enthusiastic about what they do and how they do it. So if you get a chance, please take the opportunity to go by there. There's some very impressive technology that they're doing, as well as designs for the future. I'd like for all of you to also take the opportunity to visit the NCDOT's Office of Civil Rights Business Development Zone. That's a location where you can get and be able to look at other opportunities for your companies and or network with folks who can be able to do some great things for you as well. We do have a reception tonight starting from 5 to 7. So if you're in the exhibit hall, that gives you another opportunity to socialize and network as well. And also for those who are logging their professional development hours, we will send out a self-reporting form for you to fill out so you can be able to take advantage of those as well. One of our, hopefully, very positive points tomorrow is that our distinguished governor will be here. to give us some remarks, and we look forward to that. So don't take off tonight and go back home. Come back over here and listen to a wonderful governor who's been very forward-thinking in terms of what we can do for transportation and what we can do for our citizens of North Carolina. Thank you again for being here today. It's been a very successful day from my point of view. There's been some very innovative and collaborative efforts going on, and you can see that partnerships provide the very best outcomes if you work together in a very positive way. So thank you very much for the first day's participation, and we look forward to you for the night as well as tomorrow. Have a great evening.